dancing here, it's almost like, look at that person. As Alton was saying, it's so a part of the whole that it just all fits. It just kind of flows. It's real organic, how everything just flows together, and you just kind of feel like, yeah, we should be dancing, even if we don't know how to dance. There's something you want to, and then they come and they kind of pull you out. And I hear Dr. Fiagbachi would go, you wanna, let's go, me and you. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, let's go. And you feel like you're doing what they're doing until you look at the video and you realize you're not doing what they're doing.
Well, and Pastor George, I want to ask you that same question. You kind of answered it, but from a different perspective as far as being a pastor, a minister. So when you're up in front of the people, looking out at the people, I know at times you've commented here on, man, you guys look great, you look alive, you look, or, oh man, you guys look like, do you need to wake up? Do you need, so how was it there when you look out and see all of the people there?
Well, I think everyone, first of all, there's so much energy throughout the whole service. Mm-hmm. And then once you're dealing with elements also, so it's hot there. So every now and then, because of the ministry and you're going through a translator and it's 10 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock or 9:30, and you look out, you'll see someone just like human nature. Close your eyes a little bit. But as a whole, it's not like that. I just think that, our bodies kind of sink into it. But as a whole, they are energized. And I think that what I sense as a minister is that they're pulling things out of me. Like I didn't even realize that was in me, and they just kind of pull their desire for the word, their desire to be taught. They just kind of put a strong pull on whatever you have in you, whatever anointing you have. And so that's what you kind of get there. It's effortless ministry.
Okay. And, we talked about ministry, and we did see some pictures. Some of us, while you guys were there, you would send pictures back. And so it wasn't all ministry per se. You did get to see some of the sites and see some of Ghana and other places in, Accra, other places there in Ghana. So what are some of the most interesting sites you visited? Like, what are some highlights of the trip for you?
I think for me, I tried to kind of grab a ride whenever a ride was going. So I think for me, one of the interesting things was an actual funeral. And when you went to the funeral, it was a little different than you see here in that, it was more of a celebration. You had the people in their tribal wear, dancing. You also had a lot of, it seemed like a high place of honor because you had kings and you had chiefs and all these people at the funeral in their gear, and it's like it was a whole community thing. It's just a lot of people, and they just had this huge ceremonial that shot off what seemed like fireworks, but they sound like cannons, and so you had this big thing before the funeral, and then you had that funeral, and then they have the celebration later. So it's almost like it's an all-day affair. And what was interesting about that is, much unlike we do here, is we try to get a funeral pretty quick. So if you can get it done in a week or 2 weeks, you're done. They might wait upwards of 6 months before they have an actual funeral to make sure they can get everyone that they expect to be there or can be there to be there. So it's just seemed like another level of honor that you add to a funeral. So that was very, very interesting. Slave castles. We went to 2 of those. Those were pretty interesting as well. And then Emancipation Beach. Saw a white person on Emancipation Beach. That was very interesting. The first white person we saw in the whole trip, or I saw in the whole trip, was on a place called Emancipation Beach. So it was like, how isn't that ironic? But anyway, that beach had a resort, but when you go to it, you had the normal village where it looked like typical, and then you get to the end of it, you got this nice resort that's just kind of on the end of it, and then this nice Emancipation Beat with White Sand and Ice. And so a lot of things that just kind of, just seem off, but it's just, things to think about.
Yeah, for me it was the villages. I really enjoyed going with Pastor Fiabaji and Pastor Gershon to the villages right outside of Weta Junction. It was a real community there that relied heavily on each other. That's one of the biggest things I've been thinking about since being back home is how much do I think about how much community is important in my life as it is in their lives. They relied, seemed like for a lot of things. Everyone knew each other all throughout the villages, and especially the ones we were in. Kids taking water from the water source and carrying it to I don't know if it was their homes or other people's homes that lived in the area, but it seemed you could just tell everyone knew everyone in those villages, and there wasn't any selfishness, because I don't think there could be under some of those conditions. But it was amazing to see that. And then Cape Coast, that was something I still haven't fully grasped, but being in those dungeons, being in that heat, and listening to the tour guide talk about 150 people in a space not as big as this stage, just a little bit bigger than this stage, and thinking about how they're fed, and the people in the back of the dungeon not being able to get fed, was pretty horrific to think about and kind of play in your mind while the tour guide is telling you what's going on. But it was good to see and good to be there and understand that history firsthand instead of learning about it in school. The little that I've learned about it in school. So.
Okay. Pastor George?
I think they've done their description is exactly what I've seen as well. I think one of the things that I would add is just simply that there's a culture, the community is such that they affirm, but they also correct, but I didn't see anyone getting offended. I didn't see anyone ever like, well, can you tell me what to do? It's like it just kind of, it was so communal that they were seemingly used to being able to talk direct to one another. And there's lots of, Dr. Fiagbaji's home, you'll see all types of people coming in and out all day, coming inside the house. And this is a walled home, but everyone seemingly can come in. They just have that kind of relationships where it just doesn't seem to be territorial or isolated himself. They seem to kind of embrace this openness, like everybody can come. You don't ever feel like and I think that would be one thing that we would definitely have to do a lot to get used to. Other people coming in your house, sitting down, someone sleeping there the whole week, like he mentioned. One of the pastors sleeping there the whole week there, but everybody's just functioning. Everybody's just moving on. There's no one's too big and no one's too small, I guess is the way I'd say it.
Okay, you mentioned something earlier about, I want to ask a question about something that's very important to a lot of people watching and a lot of people in this room. Let's talk about the food, okay?
Yummy.
What was the food like? The portion, you talked about the hospitality of it. What was that like? Mealtime.
Oh, let me go first on that one. Miss Mercy, Pastor Fiabaji's wife, was chefing it up. I think the 3 square meals a day,
literally.
Yeah,
Literally.
and it was a lot of it.
Square and round. Square and heat.
Yeah. It was have mercy on Miss Mercy. It was good. But the way they used their herbal drinks too, I thought was really interesting, and the natural resources when it comes to treating sicknesses. It was really cool to see how they used the teas and the plants to cure anything they had going on. It seemed like the food was a big part of their community, and it tasted really good. It tasted really good.
Alton.
I just laughed because he mentioned those herbal drinks. Those were rough. They were rough. Pastor couldn't stand it. I had it once, and I was like, "It's enough." I don't know how often did you have it? Twice?
Yeah, about
Yeah,
two,
but
three.
essentially they got to talk about these natural healing and this brewing up concoctions to get rid of congestion and stuff like that. And she cooked up some stuff, 2 different things. They were rough. But I guess when you don't have anything else, you drink it. So I was like, okay, I'll try it this one time, but I couldn't do it but one night. So anyway, but overall, I thought the food was good. I mean, it wasn't. It's a lot of rice, a lot of starches like potatoes and grains like millet and stuff like that, which seemed normal, typical to over here somewhat. It wasn't like you look at the plate and you're like, what is that? It was more, it was stuff you could recognize for the most part. I think there were a few things that you just had to get used to. Some meals they eat with their hands, and like I don't know what they call it, like a soft doughy type material.
The cassava, the cornmeal.
Akbar,
and fufu.
and fufu. And so you would have that, and you would have a soup or some fish or whatever, and it's wet like a doughy type, and so you just kind of get it and roll you up a ball of it and get you some soup, and that took a little getting used to. I did about one time, but then it took a little getting used to. But everything was, I didn't experience anything that was unedible, or that I was like, I just can't eat that. For the most part, everything had a good taste to it. Seemed natural for the most part, and had a lot of flavor. I just had to, after about the second day, I had to cut back. I just couldn't do the 3 square humped up meals every day, and because I got the feeling off, so I had to cut back on the portions. But everything I thought was very good.
Yeah, and it was way less processed. It's not processed food that they're eating either. So it was, you could definitely tell the difference in what the food is doing to the people of Ghana and what the food does to us. I look like an old man at 21 compared to what someone at 21 years old looks like in Ghana. They keep their youth for sure off of not eating as much processed food there.
Yeah, again, same. I've gotten used to Mercy, and I'm starting to stay on her good side. So she just piles it on, and she'll go, and you're like, she'll put more on there. But one thing I think is interesting, it is really pretty much food that we would eat here, meaning chicken, rice. They eat a lot of chicken and rice, but they have sauces. And those sauces, I think, is what makes the difference in their meals. One sauce was brown, one was kind of a reddish color, and it just different sauces that you put on different foods. And that's kind of how they spice up their food. And so it's good. One of the things that I enjoyed was the goat this time. I didn't care for it much the first time. And I think I'd shared that, that I didn't care much for the goat. But this time the goat was really good. I don't know what the difference was, but it was really good. And but it's always good, and it's always served with a high level of love. And they really want to serve you. And going back to what those concoctions we drank, they had some type of herb that came from a leaf or something, some type of tea leaf in their backyard. And they told us how during COVID, they would use it as a vapor. They would smell it, and then they would also use it as a drink. And I think getting off the plane, we all were starting to feel a little congested. And so we were like, okay, we'll try it. And they made us some teas. We drank whatever was in front of us. And they didn't have good taste, but I mean, I do castor oil, so I'm all right with it. But here's the thing, is I think all of us that night were up multiple times using the bathroom.
Well, okay then. So no, I'd love to. So you talked about the heat. You talked about the amount of time, maybe worship services, 3-4 hours. What was the hardest part about the trip for you? What was there anything that was particularly hard for you, or what was the hardest part?
I think for me it was two things really, both of them related to travel. I think the travel getting over there, I think it was just difficult. I don't know if that's normal, but it just seemed really difficult this time. So going over, it turned into roughly a 24-hour trip, and it was okay because I guess you had the energy for going. But coming home, that 24-hour trip got old fast, and it's like if I get on one more plane, I might turn into a Karen or something. And you just start feeling like I just cannot sit in this seat any longer, and so it was just delays and layovers, and it just was long. And then the second part is their road system is a little different than ours, and so they don't really have stoplights. There's a few stoplights in Accra, but beyond Accra, all they got are speed bumps or speed ripples. And so you run, you may go 2 miles or 3 miles or whatever, and then you hit a speed bump. I ain't talking about little boo boops. These are killer speed bumps. And so the way we're introduced to these is, so we got into Ghana late. We were supposed to got in midday. Well, we didn't get in until almost 9, close to 10 o'clock. So there, we got street lights. There is pitch black. Once you get outside of Accra, it's about pitch black in Accra for the most part. So it's just a road, and all you see is black. And you got the driver, I won't say no names, he probably running as fast as the car would go, and then you just slam on brakes, and you're like, oh, what in the world's going on? And it's a speed bump. Okay? So you hit this speed bump, and it's like, okay, you get the front of the car over, and you get the back tire just on top of it, and then you slam on gas again. So it's like, boom. And so you do this for 2.5 hours. And Elijah and myself and Robert, we were always in the back. And so it was like, you got to throw up in the air, and then you got to press on the gas, and you got to slam down, and experiencing that at 10 o'clock at night, when you like, it's like, what in the world have we got ourselves into? And it's like, as fast as the car go, as quick as you can stop it, speed bump, throw you up in the air, and do that again for about 50 times before you got to the hotel. And I was like,
they was used to it though. It was smooth how they
probably was smooth in the front.
Yeah. In the front.
But by the time we got to the hotel, it's like, are you kidding me? And every road trip was like that, and I was like, I don't know how you get used to this. It was different. It was really different.
Elijah, what about you? The hardest thing about the trip for you?
I would say the being in the back with Alton. that was tough, but it was even I was reminded of when I was driving here. One of the lights at O'Reilly and Burger King right there was flickering yellow, and I don't know what happened with the light, but it was back to the Ghana days. I was like, oh man, what are we gonna do with this? And people started slowing down at the light and just kind of figuring out who goes first. And I think that was the hardest part, is trying to catch a rhythm in Ghana. That they had it and it was smooth, but just everything, just the speed, the dancing, and trying to find a consistent rhythm with everything was one of the hardest parts. And then adjusting to the time change, for me, was one of the biggest. The 5-hour difference it was compared to here was something to get adjusted to. So it was that.
Okay, so I guess it's safe to say like here, if you drive 2, 3, 4 hours, so whoever's driving, everybody else in the car can take a nap and just.
Ain't on that. If you can go to sleep,
You fake it if you sleep in the day.
you can go to sleep. You seriously out of it. There's no way.
Pastor George, what about you? The hardest part of the trip for you?
No, I think it's always by far. I think what gets you most off is the travel itself, and I think this time, because of airlines, period, they just seem to be in a funk. Airlines. We going there, we got displaced. So we thought we were going to be able to go to JFK and then fly directly to Accra. That didn't happen. We ended up going to Atlanta, and then Atlanta to Amsterdam, Amsterdam to Accra. So that threw us off. Coming back, we're like, we're going to do it. We're going to get there at 9 o'clock. Our flight leaves at 11. We can sleep all the way back to New York. But that didn't happen either. Flight didn't leave out from Accra until 4 a.m. And then from there, we went to San Juan, Puerto Rico, and from San Juan, Puerto Rico, we still had a 3-hour ride to New York City. And so that was tearing, and that was, I guess it's something where you learn, well, we're on mission, we're doing this, but sure, man, I'd love to be back home right now. And, but the other part is, just the travel itself. It's, Elijah said a few times, you have to, you can never catch up with their rhythm in that length of time. In a week's time, they have a whole nother rhythm. The goats know it, the chickens know it, the bike riders know it, the motorcycle riders know it, the people driving the cars know it. And so I wouldn't want to drive there because I don't know the rhythm. And you got to be able to go in and out. And we had this little driver named Michael. Wasn't his name Michael?
I think so.
Michael was about this tall. He came over with a hat. He had his little hat. And Michael took us from where we were at to Cape Coast. Cape Coast is where the slave castles are. And that's about a 7-hour trip. 7-hour trip with speed bumps. 7-hour trip with people coming in and out. And Michael, if he hit the brakes one time, I don't know it. The guy was in and out and in front of all kinds of cars, blind curves, and this dude is trying to pass people, seriously. And I knew we were in trouble when Dr. Fiagbaji did this one time. He's like, his eyes got big. I was like, oh my goodness, this even frightens Dr. Fiagbaji. But it is the rhythm, their way of traffic, all that is all together. You may think you're a fast driver. There's a whole, it's totally different. Now, out of the car, peaceful. In the car, everybody's like that. His daughters drove that way too, didn't they?
Oh yeah. Same thing with Pastor Fiabaji's daughters. It was, well, she was mostly hands on deck, just being careful with us. But it was, I don't know how she did it. It was that you had to be smooth to ride those roads.
It wasn't smooth. You just had to forget about what was around you. You just drove, and you just assumed everybody else was going to do something different.
Everybody knew
It was wild.
Yeah.
I mean, I could not ever prepare for a road trip. It was, and being in the back didn't help.
Yeah, they took it. They really did take it in the back.
And I think Apostle Smalls, he was in the front. I guess on the first ride from Accra to Weta Junction, and he was like, I think he was like this by the time we got to the hotel too. And from that point on, I don't think he got in the front anymore. He was like,
Oh yeah.
Brother Logan, next time you get in front. It was scary.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing about it is not a lot of people got cars not a lot of people have cars other than Accra. So when you're on this road, you running into people that most of them have little bitty, like I'd say 80 motorcycles or a really small motorcycle, and it might be them and 2 kids and their wife, and you're just flying in this big old car running 80 or 90, and you don't see anything, and all of a sudden you just see this little dim light, and they just slam on brakes all of a sudden, and it's just this person, and they just look at you like it's normal, and he done about run over them. And it's like that for hours, and you're like, I don't see how you don't kill each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's their normal.
Yeah.
All right, so as we close out here, last question for you all. Did you learn anything about yourself because of your visit to Ghana? Did you learn anything about yourself? Who wants to start? Elijah?
Yeah, I'll go first on this one. One thing I learned that was really big for me I questioned about myself is, do I take my faith as serious as these people take their faith? Do I read my word enough? Do I act when God tells me to do something enough? It was when you see the natural ways people would do things. It wasn't like going to church for them or going to a Bible study or anything like that for them was a requirement. That's something that is changing for me now. Is don't go to things because it feels like you're trying to please God or you have to fulfill a requirement to God, but do it because it's natural and that's just the action that follows natural faith. And that's one thing I learned from those people is that's how they act, is out of natural faith and an authenticity for the love of God that I definitely have deconstructed and been working on the post trip and the weeks afterwards. For me, that's been one of the biggest things.
I think for me, I think a big thing that I got was, it was very valuable seeing the people themselves and seeing them operate in community, and just what challenged me more than anything was how hard they work with how little opportunities they have, and and they're surviving. So when you take in the slave trade, the slave castles, all that stuff, and when I process all that stuff, it just reconfirmed that, man, we come from a strong group of people. And this may seem crazy, but what I processed was, two things. It's no wonder that we could have endured slavery. And don't take that wrong. Not that it was right or anything like that, but to see how strong of a people and the strength that they're displaying right now and what they just do on an everyday basis, you got to be like, that's the only way that's the only way we could have endured slavery, is that as a people, we just have this ability to endure that stuff. Because they're outside of slavery. I would say they're working just as hard as any slave ever worked. Just in comparison, when you think about what they do just to, in their everyday survival right now, things that they have to endure. And it just was powerful to me that, we're not a weak, just has to take any old thing, mamby-pamby people. We're strong enough people where we don't have to make excuses. We don't have to be in a position of complaining about everything, because we have everything. We have all this ability and all this strength, and we have particularly over here in the States, we got all these opportunities. It don't make sense that we are maybe not advancing as much as we should when you look at them and look at their opportunities. And so that's one piece. And then the other piece is, I think I've never been an ancestry type person. I've never really been interested in that. But I think this kind of sparked an interest in just, trying to understand more about my own ancestry. If it's maybe not all the way back, but just right where it is, right at your mom and dad and their families and stuff like that. I know a little, but I don't know a lot. So it'd just be interesting now to see, where those lines and threads through ancestry actually lead, because I think there's a lot of identity in the tribe or whatever you come through, and they take pride. There's a lot of pride in whether I'm a
Ashanti.
Ashante or
Airway.
or what. There's a lot. What are you? Or you Airway? Or what are you? You. And there's a lot of pride in that. Them just kind of recognizing where you from, and so that just kind of sparked the interest in me to do a little more with that. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but do a little more with that.
Okay. Pastor George, did you learn anything about yourself because of your visit to Ghana, your visits?
Well, I think it always, for me, each time I've gone, and this time was no different, maybe even more so, is how important it is to stay connected to the Word of God and to be passionate about it. I mean, they revive that passion, and so it's good to just know that the Word of God works. It works everywhere, and it's working there in the midst of some very challenging things. It's working, and to stay sharp, to stay on the Word. One of the things that stood out to me, though, and I guess my framework is different just in the past 2 years, things that I've learned and studied just in connection to our country and enslavement and all that. One of the things that stood out to me when we were talking one evening, and Mercy was saying, we were just talking about the whole slave trade and enslavement and all that. And Mercy said, it's a hard subject for us to talk about. And I never really, it's the first time I'd heard it since I've been there, said that we don't talk about it much here. And I was like, wow. It made me wonder why. And I believe it's because it was so painful. It's a part of life that they would rather almost as though it never happened. And I thought about it in that sense of, I mean, if you, one of the stories they told us was that they would be going out to and you can tell, being there, you can see it in context. They'd go out to work in the fields that day, maybe rice or whatever they were doing. And so they would have been out all day, and then on their way back, they would be taken and put in enslavement while they were weak and they're tired. And so you could have gone out earlier that morning. You may have had your husband and your children, and then later that day you never saw them again. Never saw them again. And so I can see why, if I lost my family, how that would be a really sore place, a difficult place to go back to and to think about. And so that was something that I hadn't really thought about. And but as Alton was saying, what you do get when you go over there is you get a sense of real pride. Like, we come from some stock, man. We come from some really strong stock. Not to mention the ones who were held in the cells in those caverns of sorts, and finally were able to get to a slave ship and then made it to the Americas. That's a whole different ballgame. But they had to be extremely strong people to endure the things that they did, and I think that's a heritage that we need to know. The generations under us, they need to know that they didn't just, that their heritage is not just in this country. That going back there, they can realize, man, and there are people that really do look like us back there. And so you just get a strong sense of pride. One of the things they say, and we feel it all the time, is, you are welcome. You are welcome. That's what they say, not like you gave them something and you're welcome, or they gave you, but that's their saying, you're welcome. And that's what you get a general sense all the time, is you truly are welcome.
And just to add one other thing to what Pastor was saying about that pride and that strength was, something we don't realize is that some of these people were captured or taken in enslavement as far as 700 miles, almost 1,000 miles away from the coast. So these people had to walk 1,000 miles and then endure the slave council and then endure their boat ride. Can you only imagine you had to be a strong cat to endure 1,000 miles on foot, and then all the abuse and the lack in a slave castle before you ever. I mean, you could be in there anywhere up to a month or so, and the shortcomings of not having food or getting the proper food, hot heat, not having adequate water, and then actually making it to the boat. If you made this 1,000 miles, it's amazing that, you know, people could endure something like that. When you think about the number of people that were brought over and that endured all of that, that's powerful, you know.
And how easy it'd be to blame God for those problems, but still have as strong as a faith as they do is amazing.
And add on to that, I think of all the people that we should really just pay tremendous honor to is the women. What they went through, I mean, was just absolutely unbelievable and horrific. And yet they endured. And yet they endured. Yeah.
Well, all right. You've heard it here at New Day Christian Church from these three gentlemen here. Their experience in Ghana, some thought-provoking conversation here. And again, if you're joining us online, again, I apologize for the technical difficulties, but hopefully you were able to get a grasp on the conversation and what was taking place here tonight. So again, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and your experiences of your trip. Pastor George, thank you as always. And again, thank you all in our audience here for coming out. We appreciate you also. And so that's it for this episode of Let's Talk About It. We'll see you next time.